This is the Opinion Show. Welcome. This is where we get the editorial board of the Plain Dealer and Northeast Ohio Media Group together to discuss issues of the day. Today we're going to talk about the Tamir Rice killing, the shooting by police that has raised issues not only about toy guns that look exactly like real guns, but also about police procedures in Cleveland, coming at the same time as the Ferguson grand jury decision not to indict Officer Darrell Wilson, about how jurisdictions approach cases of police violence, how they prosecute them. We're going to be talking about all those issues today. I'm Elizabeth Sullivan. I head the editorial board. I'm joined by editorial writers Pete Krause, Chris Evans, and Sharon Broussard. And I'm going to ask Sharon to kind of give us a rundown of how you see this, the Tamir Rice shooting, and kind of some of the revelations that have come out after he was killed, and where you think we should be going.
Okay. Well, the Tamir Rice shooting is, a tragedy, I think, on both sides for the rookie cop and for the family that's bearing a 12-year-old. From what I understand, they're doing so today. I guess, though, police experts most recently took a look at this, and it's in a story that we ran today in the paper, and basically said that a lot of things went wrong that day. The car rolled up basically in the line of fire. If there was to be a line of fire, the kid had only a toy gun, which the cop apparently didn't know, and that it's unclear whether or not the kid would have heard the orders from the cop to put down the gun. So, I was at a beauty shop and everybody stopped and watched that video, and they were just like, oh my God, it did look like the kid had a real gun. But then when you take and this is an all-black beauty shop, so it's pretty interesting, like their first reaction. But I think when you dig deeper, you could see that a lot of mistakes were made on the part of the cops, and that kind of suggests that maybe this could have gone down in a different way if more cooler and more veteran heads had been at that wheel, kind of thinking, stop the car a little earlier, make sure the commands are given, give the officer enough cover so that way he doesn't have to make a decision, that can turn out to be wrong, which is what happened.
So revisit training and procedures. One interesting thing is that the personnel records of both officers involved, the rookie officer who fired the shot and then an older officer who was in the car at that point, have been released. And we were talking this morning about how surprisingly low the pay of the rookie officer was. Chris, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think the officer should be making more. I mean, it looked like from the personnel file, he came in at the max, which was 24 and change. And you kind of get what you pay for. I harken back to what Sharon was saying and the story that appeared in the paper today, where you have these police policy people looking at the way the whole thing went down. And when you watch the whole video, you see that Tamir is, pretty much like a 12-year-old kid. He's just kind of wandering around. He's got this gun. He's not firing it. He's not really, there's nobody really there, so you're not really sure if he's pointing it at anybody. At one point, he throws a snowball up and steps on it. The way the police come onto that scene, I mean, it's almost like a Hollywood movie. I mean, they just bust in there, and it seems again that, protocol would dictate that the officers stay out of the scene and approach more cautiously, not only to protect themselves, but to ascertain, what exactly it is they're coming upon. The way the officers entered that scene, there was no time, and you don't know if the officer was saying, raise your hands, or what he was saying to the kid.
What we're discussing is a silent, surveillance. Thank you, from the Cudell Recreation Center. So we, the community now have an opportunity to see Tamir, acting like a kid for a bit before the police come on the scene. Mm-hmm. They didn't necessarily themselves have an opportunity to see that, but we're also at a distance. There's no audio, so we can't hear. At some point, the authorities, a grand jury, a prosecutor, are going to have to decide whether charges are merited against the officer who fired the shot, whose father, we had a story, insists that his son felt threatened and had to fire. Mm-hmm. one of the things we discussed and advocated in our editorial was that there, with regard to Ferguson as well as the Cleveland case, is that there be a more arm's length separation between those who investigate police shootings and determine whether charges are merited than the current situation where it is internal affairs and the prosecutor's office that often relies on police testimony in their cases. The prosecutor's office here, Tim McGinty's office, has pushed back on that. What do you think about that?
Well, I would expect prosecutors to push back. I mean, they're elected to do this job, and they're going to want to do the job, but it shouldn't necessarily be their decision to make. I think there does probably need to be an independent prosecutor to look at cases involving police shootings. It would give everybody a much greater sense of satisfaction and when the outcome is determined. But go back just a bit to the actual surveillance video. And when you look at that video and you see the moment where the police officer gets out of the car and Tamir Rice is just feet away, and you see a shirt come up. Okay, it's not clear whether or not, from there, did he reach for a gun? Exactly how had this escalated? But I think when you get in a situation like that, where a police officer does have to make a split-second decision, it's really hard to second-guess. But where I think you can second-guess, and I think people are second-guessing, is that police officer should never have been in that position.
Right.
Which I think is what everybody's been saying.
I think that's...
Everybody's been saying, and apparently the police officers were not told that the person who called this in had said this could be a juvenile, the gun may be a toy gun. Now, should that information have been relayed to the police officer? I mean, as lay people, we think, yeah, probably it should. But now, as a police officer, if they give them that kind of information, does it then change the way they approach the situation? I'm not sure about that. But clearly, this should not have escalated to that. It just simply didn't have to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, the outcome, the death of this young child, I mean, the procedure that they followed didn't work. There had to have been a better way to do this. And I think, as you say, as lay people, we're standing on the outside and we've got hindsight. But it just seems common sense would dictate, if you're coming upon a scene where you have, from what the dispatcher told you, a man waving or threatening people with a gun, that you'd take some measures to, provide some distance and cover and really be able to ascertain exactly what the situation is, rather than just drive up.
So we're talking about the Cleveland Police Department, which, in the case really just about 2 years ago, where the 137 shots were fired into the by then stopped vehicle of Melissa Williams and Timothy Russell, who had taken police on a high-speed chase through several communities and were finally stopped in an East Cleveland school parking lot, and they were not armed at that time, and yet 137 shots fired at them or into the vehicle. At that time, the Cleveland Police brass, as well as City Hall, were very resistant to the idea that this suggested that some of the procedures and training within the Cleveland Police Department were deficient, and even though the Ohio Attorney General's office said that there was systemic failures involved. I wonder whether we think that the Cleveland Police Department is still sort of taking that position, or City Hall or the mayor's office still taking that position after this case, where it seems so evident that procedures need to be tightened up and training needs to be much more ongoing and intensive about how to handle, police violence cases in order to, prevent a repeat of this. I mean, what do we think?
Definitely, because I mean, they could say, well, we didn't have a video about what happened in East Cleveland, so, maybe everything we told them went right, but, a little bit wrong here because of fear. But there's no way you can argue that. This one, you could see exactly how the police officer rolled up, how he approached the situation. You can't hear, so that's a little bit of a deficit. But I don't think that, you know, commanders are telling people you should roll into the line of fire to confront somebody and then, you know, get into these kind of situations. So I mean, if I were them, I think I would take this as a big learning lesson that something is not working and we need to redress our
absolutely,
our
and make a you know, again, I understand it's an ongoing investigation, so they're going to be circumspect, but I think just based on the videotape, they can say, you know, it's time for us to, you know, review some of our protocols when we come upon a scene like this. And again, this is all happening against the backdrop of a Justice Department investigation into the use of deadly force by the Cleveland Police Department that started back in March of 2013 and is wrapping up, we understand at this point. I mean, and I think that's going to be very interesting because I think that report may very well substantiate what the Attorney General, Mike DeWine, said about systemic failure when it comes to oversight and accountability in the use of deadly and non-deadly force in the police department.
Chris, do you think that the Cleveland Police Department has been reluctant to impose any changes while that investigation is ongoing?
Yes.
And is that actually the right approach? Because, you know, maybe it's important to be more, you know, affirmative.
Proactive. No, I think we've talked about that, and I think, I think that it's very easy for us to judge after the fact, and the work that the police officers do is dangerous work. And they never know if a situation is going to escalate or not escalate, and they need to be trained on how to deal with people with mental illness or you know, even a 12-year-old child with a toy gun. They've got to approach those situations in a way that they can resolve them in a peaceful manner. And so, those protocols should always be under review, and it should be a fluid
and there should be, and it seems to me there should be training as well. I mean, you look at a sports team, you know, the Cleveland Browns. You know, they practice every day for
all the good that does.
For all, you know, for all the, you know, the type of defenses or offenses that they're going to see from the teams that they play. You know, they're practicing all the time based on what may or may not happen. And it just seems to me that, you know, it's one thing to have the procedures in place, but it also seems that police officers should be continually put into mock situations where they can practice what it's like to have to make a split-second decision with a gun to use deadly force, whether it's, you know, in all kinds of situations. It just seems to me that is essential.
Right, I agree.
One of the things we haven't talked about in this case is that Tamir Rice was waving around a weapon or had a weapon in his waistband at the point that the police pulled up that looked like a regular weapon. I mean, was equivalent. The Cleveland Police Chief Williams made this point in his news conference more than once. It looked like a weapon. The little orange, easily removable cap that indicated it was a toy had been removed. My own son told me that he used to play with weapons exactly like that. You know, should there be an effort to legislate a requirement that toy guns be really distinctively different from real weapons? And how do you actually do that when there's so many toy guns out there already in circulation?
Yeah, and the other thing, Betsy, is that if you go to a gun show, you'll see that these companies like Glock and these other gun companies, I mean, they make like a 9mm for a woman and it's pink, and they come in different colors, and so that confuses the issue. What I really like, and the Plain Dealer Courts reporter Rachel DeSelle's been writing about this. Yvonne Pointer, you know, has started this initiative for a toy gun buyback, and I just think that's a really smart way to deal with this. You know, let's get all the guns off the street, and you know, the fact that this 12-year-old kid had to pay the ultimate price just because he was goofing with a BB gun should really serve as an incentive to the community.
But on the other hand, you know, to be practical, not all those guns are going to make their
No.
way back to Yvonne
Not-
Pointer's
just like the real
unit
guns,
or
yeah.
real guns. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think in addition, this needs this, you know, I understand many people are having conversations with their kids about how they're using these guns, where they're using guns. Some people are taking them away, which, you know, is a good idea too. Also about, you know, dealing with the cops and, you know, following orders. If you can hear the orders, which we don't know, you know, we don't have full clarity about whether or not he was ignoring the orders or what was going on. But just, you know, it is time, I think, also for a conversation about if these guns are in your household, or if you ever
Right.
are playing around with a friend and a friend brings one, you know, to your house, or, you know, how
Well,
you should
and I
be
think
dealing
somebody
with
raised
that.
the question that, you know, what if this had been a white kid in Hudson in a park there playing with a toy gun
Right.
and a white cop?
Where the assumption
You know, with the
is
assumption
it's all
that-
harmless.
Perhaps, yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, you know, common sense to a large degree has to prevail at some point. I mean, you know, we've got to make sure our kids aren't going out there and putting themselves in a position, even if it's innocent,
Right.
that can be perceived in a bad way. And we have to understand the environment that a lot of these kids live in, and impress upon them and upon parents and supervisors and adults and so forth that this is serious business.
That's going to have to be the last word. That actually is probably a subject for a whole nother conversation. We want to thank you for listening in. We welcome your thoughts and comments in the comments section when this is posted at cleveland.com. And thank you again. Tune in next time.